My name is Summer, and I showed up here today with really not much of a plan. So I don't have anything prepared, I don't have an agenda, I'm not looking to have any particular effect on you, or teach you something, or get you to see something, or get you to learn something, because that's exactly what I encourage parents not to do, is to have an agenda and to try to manipulate your kids into learning something you think they should know. So I just thought I would just tell you a little bit about myself and see where that goes, and I'll open up to questions. So I am 33 years old. I was born in Northern California. I'm the third of 4 children. I have 3 brothers. My mom was 21 when she had my oldest brother. And, well, that was a long time ago. And this was before people even knew what homeschooling was, let alone unschooling, which wasn't even a term my family had, even though that's, I guess, what we were doing. I'm still not really comfortable with the term because I feel like it's been polluted or diluted. It just doesn't really mean what I feel it used to mean or what it meant to my family growing up. So to me, I like to call myself life-educated or self-educated. Some people call it child-led learning or self-directed learning, interest learning, you know, those terms. But basically, I've never done any schoolwork, ever. So I wasn't homeschooled. I've never been in a classroom. I've never sat at a desk. I've never been given a worksheet. I've never been asked to finish or even start any kind of school-like activity or learning activity that wasn't initiated by me, myself. So that's kind of the basic. I'm not exactly a world schooler. I know that that's the general topic here. But my family did move to Hawaii when I was 11, and we lived out of our house riding buses on the beach for like 7 months, I think, before we realized we were staying, and we got a house. But most of the questions I get about growing up without school, and without any kind of induced education, required learning, is the how. How did you learn how to do this if no one made you do it? And it's a really interesting thing to me because I have a hard time relating to that because to me it was just natural. Like, what do you mean? You need someone else outside of yourself to tell you what to do to be okay as a world? And that always kind of gets my mind going. So growing up, I started to get really curious about what made my family so different. Everywhere we went and everyone that we met would make these comments to us about us. And they would be like, to my mom, you know, how are your kids so well behaved? How are your families so peaceful? Your children are the most delightful, intelligent, well-spoken, well-socialized, communicative, friendly, all those adjectives people would apply to my family. And I was kind of feeling, why? Like, other kids aren't fun to be around? Other kids aren't enjoyable to talk to? You can't have an intelligent conversation with other kids? Why not? What's going on here? So as I got older, I got more and more curious because I started to compare. And I started to observe other kids and other parents and wonder and ask my own questions and start talking about it. And why don't other kids like their mom as much as I like you? Why don't other kids enjoy life the way that we do? Why can't they talk to their parents? Why don't other moms seem to like being with their kids the way you like being with us? So all those questions, and over my whole life now, have gotten me into really dissecting that and why that is. And I've come to the conclusion, and this is also through a lot of observation in childcare, because I was a nanny for many, many years, so many different ages, lots of different families and styles of parenting. And what I came to, really, I felt like underneath it was that adults are terrified of children. But what you're really terrified of, you're terrified of yourself, and you're seeing it in your children. You're terrified of who children actually are. You're terrified of what a human being essentially is, what they're born as. So most people think that a child is born, oftentimes a lot of people think there's like a blank slate, or an empty jar to be filled with, something to be molded and shaped and made into. And then I realized that that's because that's what you think of yourself. And that parents are so terrified that if they don't control themselves, they don't make themselves, they don't discipline themselves, then they'll be a failure. So you're afraid that your children are going to fail in life if you don't control them, manipulate them, force them, make them into something you think they should be, because that's what was done to you. And you believe the authorities that taught you. And then you become the authority that teaches your child that. So a lot of people grow up developing this belief about themselves that they're not going to be okay unless they do what other people think they should do. Unless they learn the things that other people think they should learn. Unless they acquire the knowledge that the world around them tells them that they need to be okay. So it's all based on this idea that you need something outside yourself controlling you. And then you put that on your children. And you think you have to be a controller of your child's life or they're not going to be okay in the world. They can't just sit around and read a book all day. They can't just do artwork. You have to have math. You have to be able to get a job. You have to function in the real world. And you think you know what they need to do that. Which to me is extraordinarily egotistical to think that you know what another human being needs to thrive in the world, in the life, that you have no idea the life that they're going to be choosing. So, there's that. So well, let's just go with a few of the basics. Basically, I realized that my mom, she didn't only trust. She didn't have to trust because she knew. You only have to trust when you don't know and you're settled. She didn't have to trust my innate nature because she knew that I am perfect, whole, and complete. She did not need to fix or change me. She really was just there to be with me and enjoy life with me as a friend and a partner, not as an authority figure. And at times, sure, a guide. At times, like you would with any friend, you would guide, make a recommendation, offer a solution, brainstorm together. But I was never ever told that she knew better than me what was best for me in my life. I was always told that I alone know what is right for myself in my life, and that I am trustworthy. That not only did my mom trust me, but I can trust myself. I can trust my interests, my passions. I can follow my heart, and I'm going to be okay. And I knew that because my mom knew that. Because we believe our parents. So, I'm guessing that the thing everyone probably wants to know is like, what did my brothers become? Which I think is really interesting. Like, are you okay? Are you successful in life? And I will answer that, but first I want to point out that that's not the point. It shouldn't be about what your kids become someday. It should be about respecting your fellow human beings right now, regardless of their age, because that's the right thing to do. Not because of how they'll turn out. Not like, I'm going to treat you with love and respect now so that I'll get what I want out of you later. It's, I'm going to treat you with love and respect right now because that's what you deserve as an equal human being. And then what does that look like? What does respecting children actually look like? And I get really into this because I feel like there's a huge disconnect between what adults think they're communicating to children and the communication that children are receiving. There's this huge gap, and I love to dive into that and discuss that and get into the very subtle and very rarely questioned. Like a lot of the really common parenting techniques and methods and the how-tos, how to get your kid to learn this, how to get your kid to do that, how to get them to act like that. A lot of that is just manipulation. It's just a nicer ways. There's lots of nicer ways to manipulate your kid into learning or being the way you think they should be, acting the way you think they should act. But no matter how you dress it up, it oftentimes is just manipulative, a lot of these methods and tactics. And I like to get into that because I feel like so much of it goes unnoticed because it was done to you, and we don't even realize oftentimes the effect we're having on the child. You might think that you're teaching them how to read, sitting them down, making them learn sounds. You think you're teaching them how to read. They might actually be learning, Mom doesn't think I'm smart enough. I'm not trustworthy. I could be trusted when I'm learning. Mom thinks I'm not good enough to do this on my own. I guess I need someone else to tell me what to do. I can't do this. I'm stupid. And so a lot of these ways that we get kids, even if it's not by force, even if it's not necessarily like schooling, sometimes it's even really subtle, even in nicer ways that we try to get kids to learn things. Even if it's in the like, Mom, what time is it? Well, do you see where the big hand is and the little hand? And when this hand is that hand, that's what we call a teachable moment, right? Kid just asks what time it is. And instead of being open and honest and genuine and present in the moment you would with a friend or a partner, you turn into something else and you try to manipulate them into learning something. And how does that make you feel? If your friend or partner did that to you, how would that make you feel? It's like, I asked you a simple question. If you think that I need you to tell me what to learn, I'll learn how to tell the time when I damn well please. Thank you. So I can go off on teachable moments for a long time. It's a huge pet peeve of mine because it's extremely prevalent in the alternative education movement. It's considered like a positive way of getting your kids to learn. And this might sound harsh, but to me it's just another way of manipulating people into being and knowing the things you think they should. So does anyone have any questions?
First of all, your mom sounds extraordinary.
Maggie, closer.
My question is about support versus manipulation. I'm listening very, very closely to what you're saying about I am trustworthy, I can trust myself, and helping kids develop. And that's my question. Where does what does support look like versus manipulation?
So what is the difference? What's the difference between support, encouragement, and manipulation? So this is going to look different for everybody. Everyone's going to feel that there's a different threshold, right? Where that crosses over, support crosses over manipulation. I think it really helps to imagine it being done to you by someone you really love and respect, like a close person in your life. Whether it's a spouse or a partner, that helps a lot. My mom said that was the thing that she did a lot, was how would I feel if my husband spoke to me the way that I'm speaking to my child. I like to use the word invasive or non-invasive because there's non-invasive support and there's invasive support. And this is where it gets tricky. There's like your business and there's their business and then there's your business together. So it's kind of like there's you and there's me and there's our relationship, which is almost like a third entity with a child, with anyone. So in my experience, what I experienced as being actually supportive support versus what I call invasive support is kind of like what I was just saying about the teachable moment. A lot of people would say that's being supportive of your child's learning, and I consider that to be very invasive. It's like you're stepping into their intellectual space and thinking that you know what they should be doing, what they should be thinking, how they should be using their brain. So support to me would be like, Mom, what time is it? 12 o'clock. You answer the question directly without turning it into something that it's not. Without using their curiosity against them. So oftentimes what happens is I feel like children ask questions and then adults will use those questions as teaching weapons against their children. And it creates a disconnect. It's not connecting with your child, it's actually pushing them away. Because then, I remember when I was little, I felt safe asking my mom questions, always, because she never made it into something it wasn't. It was never more than what I asked for. Unless it was just like a natural response without an agenda. I think it's always that you can feel, like we can feel, especially children, you can feel when there's an agenda. And so it'd be like, Mom, what time is it? And she'd be like, oh, it's 12. I can see the big hand is there. That's what she felt like saying, not to get me to learn something, but because she's minding her own business. She's expressing herself the way that she feels to express herself and allowing me to express myself the way that I feel to express myself. So it's hard to explain and it gets lost in translation because to me it's a lot more like on an energetic level. It's not so much about what you're doing or what you're saying, it's about where it's coming from. And if you honestly and truly know that your child is perfect, whole, and complete, you wouldn't even feel the desire to be meddling in their intellectual space, psychological space. I'm not entirely sure how to describe what I'm meaning. So, support being more natural. It's just very more natural, like you would with a friend or a partner. A friend says, yeah, I'm reading this book, and I said this thing, and they're kind of expressing that they're curious or interested about something. You're like, oh, it might for you. Like if you and I did that, I'd be like, oh, I have a book to recommend to you. And you would be like, oh, cool, thanks, and you can read it or not. That's supportive. But I didn't do it with an agenda to get you to change or learn something or know something I think you should know. I did it because I genuinely want to contribute to your experience in life for joy and for an exchange of enjoyment. So it's more about where it's coming from than what you're doing. I think that the focus with my mom, her focus was always on where am I coming from and interacting with my children. And my mom's number one priority in our household and in my life was peace and harmony and cooperation as a community, as a tribe. And it had very much to do with what's happening now and who we are now. And learning to coexist and respect one another now, not for what we would be someday. She really didn't, it wasn't a concern of hers, because she actually knew that we were fine. She wasn't worried about us. And that was one of the things I think had the biggest impact on me. But just to finish that a little bit, I was going to say that if you want your children to keep asking you questions, don't use their questions against them, because they'll go find someone else to ask. And I remember being little and learning very quickly who to ask questions, who to share my experience with, and it was always my mom. I stopped asking my dad questions, he would turn it into a teaching thing. I stopped asking my grandma questions, she would turn it into a teaching thing. We'd go out in the rose garden, and before I could even say anything, she'd be like, can you count how many roses there are? I didn't want to hang out with grandma anymore, it wasn't safe. So if you want your children to feel safe with you, and you want them to be talking to you, and you want them to learn from you, you need it to be safe for them to ask you questions. And every time you do that, every time you use a question against them to manipulate them into something, it becomes unsafe little by little. So my mom, she refused to believe that you couldn't be friends with your kids. And she absolutely refused to believe that you couldn't be friends with your teenagers, especially. And she was right, because all four of us remained extraordinarily close to my mom all throughout. She's the first person to hear about anything that happens in any of our lives still. because she stayed safe for all of us. I never felt like she thought I should be or do anything different than what I was being or doing in that moment. She never looked at me and thought I could be better. I should have learned this. I should have known this. This is the knowledge my kids should be having because they're this age. She never did that. She trusted our innate nature, our natural, I would say even biological urge to thrive. And she knew, like you could tell, she could tell from the time we were little, like we learned how to walk and talk. Totally natural. And then as soon as, we could grab the spoon, we're pushing her hand away. No, I want to feed myself. There's a craving for independence in children and human beings. Craving for independence. So they will learn the things that they need to learn to live a life of independence. So when people say things like, well, they have to know basic math. And I'm like, well, if they have to, then they will. You don't have to worry about it. What are you really afraid of? They're going to be living in your basement forever? What 15-year-old is going to not take their driving test and get their permit because they can't read? I would have learned rocket science if it meant getting my driver's license. I would have learned anything. I did not need my mom to tell me that I should learn how to read. I didn't even need her encouragement. I just needed her to answer my questions directly when I had them.
Was there ever a place for intervention? I'm just curious, were there other people beyond your mom or your family unit? Or
Intervention in what way? Did I...
Delays in speech, for example, or reading, or, mental health.
Unfortunately, I don't have direct experience in my family with that. So I don't want to pretend like I am an expert in something I don't actually have experience with. So I can only really speak from my own direct experience. But I would imagine, that's another area where the only thing I can say about that is that it's like follow your gut. You're the mom, That's what my mom tells everybody. She's like, you know. You are the mom and you know.
How do you feel about electronics? Because in today's, our kids, they use a lot of electronics. What are your thoughts on that?
And again, it's not really something I like to get into because I really feel that that's a very, something that each family really needs to feel out for themselves. And that's something that every child interacts with very differently. I've witnessed certain children having what I would describe as an allergic reaction. And then so it's really kind of more like something I feel like everyone really needs to feel out for themselves. I didn't have one growing up. So again, not part of my direct experience. My mom threw out the TV when I was a baby because it was too disruptive in our family. And her priority was peace and harmony. And it was causing, it was when we were toddlers though. So I feel like it's so different as they get older, and then it has to do with your environment, it has to do with who you are as a parent, it has to do with all kinds of things. It's not something I can say that yes or no or negative or positive. I feel like it's very individual, and everyone has to kind of find what works for them. But again, it's also one of those things I hear a lot of people saying like, oh, but it's so educational. And I don't really care if it's educational or not. I feel like you need to support your family and your child's overall wellness, like whole being wellness. Whether or not something's educational really you shouldn't like make an exception for something because it's educational if it's having an overall negative impact on your life. So it's like it might not be having an impact, a negative impact on your life, and for your family, unlimited screen time, and for your family, maybe not so much, So it's one of those things, do do all your research, listen to all the science, read all the articles, and then go with your gut and observe your child and work it out with them. In my family, that was like one of the number one things I can say that I appreciated the most about my mom's leadership. Is that it was it was always a discussion. We were very much like a democratic household, the five of us. And we would sit down and we would talk these things out and be like, okay, look, this whole reading till midnight thing, it's not working for Clay. He wants the lights out at 10. Like, can we come up with a compromise? So it was always like everyone had their individual freedom, but then we also found the places where those freedoms met and heard one another, and we had to work out how to live together and how to function together as a whole. So those are the things that, like, I can't tell someone how to function as a whole. You're not the same group of people that my family is. But I feel like it's really important to just have those open, honest, authentic discussions with your children. And my mom always being like, look, you guys, I don't know what I'm doing. You gotta help me out here. You know, well, what do you guys think we should do? Okay, let's try this tomorrow and see how it goes, then we'll revisit it. And constantly changing and evolving. You know, with household chores and dishes and food and technology and whatever it was, everything was always like we approached it as a tribe, as a democratic society, and we all had our say. And there were very few times in my childhood when my mom put her foot down, and it was really only when it came to like something she felt to be actually harmful to our natural development.
You have it on the mic, please.
Earlier you mentioned, the most common question you get is, are you and your brothers okay? You mentioned you're going to mention that you're all dead. Bring that back up.
Yeah, we're okay. I think so.
Can you restate the question? Can you restate?
Oh, yes, I'm sorry. He said if I could come back to the are we okay? Like, what are we doing now with our lives as adults? So my oldest brother, Garrett, he lives in the Bay Area, and he's been obsessed with sailboats since he could say the word sailboat. He learned how to read so that he could read about people who sailed around the world. He learned maps so that he could design wooden sailboats to be built. He pretty much learned everything that he's ever learned for boats. All with that goal in mind. So now, he manages a charter company in the San Francisco Bay, and he's a captain, and he races, and he buys and sells, and I don't know, sailboats, well, that's sailboats. And he's married and has a little boy. And then my brother Clay, he's the only one of us that actually went to university. He's always been like the brain of the family. And he went to UC Berkeley and finished school in New York, and he got a degree in political science. Not that he uses it, because now he gets paid like some stupid amount of money to mess around on computers for a few hours a day. I don't even know, I don't understand what he does. Like, he works at home on a computer and gets paid, it's ridiculous. I don't get it. And then I got into glass bead making when I was 14. So while everyone else was in high school, I was obsessing over melting glass in a torch, and I started my own business at 16. And then I did some other things. I did a lot of nanny work. I spent a lot of time with children. And then when I was in my 20s, I took on glass bead making as a full-time deal and started selling wholesale. I have a whole line of jewelry I developed. And then I got into larger blown glass and sculpture. So I've been on Maui for the last 10 years, living on Maui, and I work out of a couple different glass blowing shops there. I make my own work, and I sell to local galleries and online. My jewelry is sent all over the place. So yeah, I'm happy glass melter. It's been an obsession since I was 14. This is all about glass melting glass. So I do torch work, glass blowing, and I also do larger furnace work glass blowing. We're working in teams. I have all the scars to show for it. My little brother actually, at 15, got a job as a dishwasher in a restaurant. And he just wanted his own pocket money, I guess. And he worked his way up to being a chef. So he didn't even go to culinary school, and he's over the years worked his way up into these like super high-end restaurants as like a chef. And then the last couple years, he really got burnt out on it, and he's turned to woodworking. And now he's working this really cool old woodworking shop on Maui, where he's learned how to, he got a lathe that he's gold turning, and he's making like really kind of change direction. But all of us, you can see our passions from the time we were really little. And since we were allowed to pursue them and not direct our attention to anything else, we got really good at things really young, really fast. Like I was already, pretty much had my own business when I was 16. I was selling craft fairs, farmers markets, that kind of thing. My hair was boats when I was little. I was into fairies and mermaids and fantasy stuff, and that's what I do. I make glass fairies and mermaids. I was also into the pyro. I just love making pretty things with my hands, and that's what I do. I make pretty things with my hands. My little brother Kai was like always arranging plates of food. When he was little, like he'd make them into these art pieces, and they served them to all of us and the family, and he became a chef. So that's where we're at now. Yeah. There was someone else had questions.
Oh, okay. You have, I was raising my hand. Do you have a question? Okay.
Yeah, I don't know if you're ready but it's more at social level. Do you ever feel like you're missing something? Because one of my fears is that he started going to regular school, traditional school, and the group of families and kids that he was in school with are now with their annual trips, the annual reunions, all this about his generation, and I know they are making some bonds that will be useful for them in the future, for networking basically. Do you ever feel like you missed, or that you needed more of that? That's my question here.
Yeah, I understand what you're asking. I get that question a lot, in some form or another. Did everybody hear what the question was? Socialization. Do I feel like I missed out? No. Not even a little bit. I feel like my social life was actually much broader and richer and more open because I wasn't limited to a certain age group or any group at all. I was very in the real world. I was interacting with real people in the real world. I was with my mom when we got a flat tire on the side of the road and talking to the guy who needed help and figuring out how to deal with that. So not only did I get like socialization with real life people of varying ages and vocations and life experiences, I also learned how to handle real life situations at the same time. And as far as peers go, people seem to think that kids need all these friends their own age. I don't really get that. Not when they're little. And in fact, if you read, I don't know if anyone's read The Magical Child by Joseph Chilton Pierce, he studies child brain development, and he talks about how children don't really need social peers under the age of like 8 or 9, and it's not required for their mental development. Not to say they shouldn't, I think it's just that. So when it comes to socialization, we had maybe one other homeschool family growing up because we were extraordinarily unusual, and we found it very challenging to be around other families because people would be initially inspired and they'd be asking my mom questions, and then they'd realize like what was really going on, and they'd be like, oh no, I can't do that. And then they would start to criticize it and tear it down. So it was really difficult actually to have friends, like other families that we hang out with. We really only had one other family when we were little. And then as I got to be like 11 or 12, that's when my own desire for socialization clicked and set in. So I really feel like it's the same as any other learning, that it needs to come from the child, that you don't really need to be manipulating your child's world or their social life. That it will come naturally. And when they start to express more of an interest, hey, you want some help with that? And they're like, yeah. You're like, okay, cool, what do you want to do? Should we go sign up for a class? I don't know, how do you want to do this? And work it with them. I think it's really strange that oftentimes parents act like they have to arrange their kid's life without actually consulting their kid. I don't get that.
You kind of answered this already, but I'd like you to elaborate on how your family dealt with conflict.
I think there wasn't a lot, actually. I didn't know that until I was older. And I started to look around and be like, whoa, whoa. And what's going on here? Why can't you guys just get along? Because we were really, really close, and we were really, really functional. And conflict was met with the whole group support, the whole family. So my mom was really all about the relationship, our relationships with her and with each other. So any conflict that came up was always with a lot of love and understanding and open communication. And nothing was ever pushed away or it shouldn't be. Our experiences were all completely valid and acknowledged and welcomed and accepted. So in that kind of space, I feel like all conflicts kind of just they just disappear when there's all that acceptance and that space and allowing things to be, allowing the upset, allowing the conflict, making space for the conflict, instead of trying to shut it down, silence it, make it go away and push it away. It was kind of more like, oh, we're having an upset. Cool. What are we upset about? Let's go ahead and have an upset. Let's have a breakdown. Let's have a meltdown. Let's scream it out. You know, this world is really messed up. There's a lot of things to be upset about. And I think oftentimes little children they're feeling so much at once, and they just need to get it out. And I remember being really young and having an upset, and instead of my mom trying to figure out what it was or how she could fix it, it was literally just accepted. It was just accepted. I was just held, physically, energetically, held, loved, and accepted, instead of cool, buddy, what are you doing? Do you need someone to apologize to you? You're having trouble. It was all the psychological figuring out about the upset and trying to get it, whatever conflict it was always first addressed with the just being and accepting the conflict and allowing it space, and then being like, okay, do we want to find a resolution in this conflict? Do we want to resolve this conflict right now? It was always a co-creation with my mom and my brother. Always a co-creation. So it's never the conflict, this is how we deal with it in this family. You know, my mom was never you guys need to work, you need to apologize. You know, you need to get along. You need to, it was never like that. It was always okay, how am I participating in this conflict? And allowing space. Allowing a lot of space and acceptance, and then figuring it out together. So, does that answer? Right. 5 minutes. Does anyone else have any questions? I know probably how I learn to read, right? Everybody wants to know. No? Okay. Cool.
Tell us.
It just happens. Most of the time I get that question, how did you learn to read? How did you learn to do?
I would want to follow up on the question. So how do you, I understand everything about your mom handle conflict resolution. How do you do that when you're a highly sensitive parent?
Highly sensitive?
Highly sensitive. You cannot handle that much conflict from your own childhood and your own trauma as well, when you're just sensitive to noise and get overwhelmed with things.
That definitely sounds challenging. That sounds to me like that's probably your personal journey of healing and learning and discovering yourself, where that's coming from. And finding those places that are causing that and healing those places. I can't tell you how to do that. But I feel like it's an ongoing process of self-inquiry, which is how my mom explains all the time, really, is that she says that it's always the children, the child is the problem. She really likes to emphasize that. The problem is never out here, that's not where the conflict is happening, and that it's always here. And to always be asking yourself those questions. Why? Why am I uncomfortable right now? What am I believing about what's going on that's causing me to be in pain over it? Why am I suffering so for my mom, it had to do a lot with like healing her own childhood wounds and discovering the things that she believed about herself. That anger is unacceptable, that you shouldn't be, you should get along, you shouldn't argue, you should be quiet, you shouldn't be noisy, you shouldn't yell, you shouldn't run, you shouldn't scream, you shouldn't cry. And that it's really just probably about the things that you're believing about yourself, how you should and shouldn't be, is what's causing you to think that your children should and shouldn't be a certain way. Making sense?
What your observation, what was your mom's experience in terms of how she learned through her own healing and through her own experience to be how she was?
My mom says it was just obvious. She says that she didn't feel like it was a choice. That when she sees, when she feels, and when she sees what is right for her, she can't not do it that way. So it was very little by little for her when she was 21, when she had an oldest brother. She had no idea what she was doing. She had no experience with children. She didn't know she would do anything different than anyone else. And so when it came, it was kind of like it started right then at birth and infancy. Wait, why am I putting my kid in a crib to cry myself to sleep? Why do I believe that that's a good idea? Who told me that? Where did that idea come from? Because it feels wrong. And so she just started throwing out things, these mental ideas that we get from other people and teachers and society and things, and just kept going with what really felt right with her children. So she didn't put us in cribs to cry herself to sleep. She just started wearing us. She didn't know what attachment parenting was. She just did what felt right and felt natural to her. I'm not saying that everyone has to do what she did, but do what feels right and feels natural to you. And she started to realize the conflicts between what her gut and what felt right and natural to her in her heart, and what her mind was telling her from all of her learned programming. And she started to question those things and unravel those things and test them against what was really going on here, and let that guide her. So my mom's very heart-centered and very connected to her intuition, and follows that connection she had with her children. And she read Summerhill. It was one of the first books. It's a book called Summerhill. And if any of you have not seen the movie Summerhill, it's an absolute must-see for all kinds of alternative home education. It's incredible. It's Summerhill, the movie, and it's free on YouTube. Yeah. But it's about the free school of Summerhill in the UK, I believe.
Yeah, by A.S. Neil.
A.S. Neil, yes. Yeah. It's brilliant. So they made a movie, but he wrote the book, and that was one of my mom's first introductions to non-schooling. And then it was the continuum concept. Continuum concept. And that was one of the things, that's the best book ever written, I feel, on the whole planet. I feel like everyone should read that book. And that was one of the things that got her to really trust that gut and that biological mothering instinct. The continuum concept by Jean Liebloff.
It's amazing.
Absolutely incredible. And then the other book that I want to recommend before I say, okay, Dumbing It Down. That will just blow the whole schooling thing apart.
Is that the Bolt's book?
John Taylor Gatto. Dumbing It Down is John Taylor Gatto.
If I may ask, what is your relationship with you that when your grandparents now that you're older?
So my parents split up when I was almost 2, and they both remarried. So my little brother's actually my half-brother. And I have a little sister too, but I always forget to mention her because we never lived together. We're more like cousins. She's my dad and my stepmom, so she had a completely different upbringing. Very, very normal. So my relationship now with my dad is great, he's a great guy, super nice guy. He totally didn't get any of this. He didn't understand anything that was going on. My dad's family crucified my mom. My grandma actually called CPS on us, Child Protective Services. Sent to school. Also, we were like vegetarian and all kinds of things. My mom was just super alternative, and my grandparents were really, really freaking out. So my dad's whole side of the family vilified my mom and would have burned her at the stake if they could. So by the time I came along, my mom had really disconnected. You know, my parents divorced when I was a baby, and I really didn't have as much interaction with my dad's side of the family as my older brothers did. And you can actually see a lot of negative effects on them. They had a lot more pressure and fear. And so a lot of learning was a little bit more difficult for them than it was for me, because they had instilled self-consciousness from my dad's family. So my relationship with my dad now is pleasant. We've always gotten along fine. It's never been very deep, but